And as the Israel-Hamas war intensifies, demonstrations continue to flare up across the globe. With the war entering a very sensitive phase, people from around the world express their support, even as the issue continues to divide the world. While thousands of Israelis gathered in Tel Aviv and demanded measures to secure the release of hostages taken by the militant group Hamas. These are the visuals from Tel Aviv, where hundreds of demonstrators joined the relatives of the hostages in the demonstrations. Well, people also gathered outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's official residence in central Jerusalem, where they called on the Prime Minister to resign as his efforts to secure the release of hostages fail. At the same time, activists also gathered at the Ministry of Defense in Tel Aviv and called for a ceasefire. While thousands of Israelis demonstrated on the streets, as you can see, holding placards and demanding the release of the hostages. Thousands also took part in a rally in London's Trafalgar Square in support of Palestinians and called for an immediate ceasefire. London has seen large demonstrations on 3 successive weekends since the war started on October 7th. Well, in the U.S., thousands of young people filled the streets of downtown Washington, D.C. to protest the Biden administration's support of Israel. These are the visuals from Washington, D.C. on your screens right now, and an enormous Palestinian flag was unfurled by a crowd which filled the street leading up to the White House. The demonstrators held signs calling for an immediate ceasefire. Meanwhile, in France, thousands marched for peace in Paris. As you can see, enormous people marching for peace in Paris. And the colorful procession of Palestinian flags drew some 19,000 demonstrators, and this is according to the local police. Thousands also demonstrated in Berlin, waving placards with slogans. Berlin police checked personal details of participants over display of banners with banned slogans. The banners in question here were confiscated or painted over. Not only this, thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators also filled the streets of Toronto and Ottawa in Canada's Ontario province. The demand remained the same, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Earlier, Canada's foreign minister reiterated a call for a humanitarian pause in Gaza and said that there is very little time left to get Canadians out of Gaza. While world and regional powers fail to reach any consensus on how to deal with the escalating situation and the conflict, demonstrations and protests continue to flare up across the world at the moment. And Israel is rocked by widespread demonstrations at the moment, staged by Israelis outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. The outrage among the people is growing against Netanyahu. Well, in Tel Aviv, thousands of demonstrators gathered on November 4th demanding the release of hostages taken by the Palestinian militant group Hamas. In Jerusalem, the demonstrators staged protests outside Netanyahu's official residence and demanded his resignation over October 7th attack that started the Israel-Hamas conflict altogether.
Because this whole government is not legitimate. They are having decisions that have to do with the life of my children, of our daughters, while their daughters have accepted